I think when you were upstairs, I hope you told Mom that. No more should. Like Joe and OG should get out of my basement. Do not should on us.
That's right.
Please. No, we belong here.
From Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and I think most of us don't tell the people who are on our air quote board of directors that they're on our board. Joe, I know I'm pretty much the chairman of your board, but you've never once told me that I'm on your board of directors.
You have any words, coach, for the team?
Rah, rah, ree. Kick him in the knee. Rah, rah, ras. Kick him in the other knee.
Wow, he has never coached a team in his life.
Go out there and bite him in the kneecaps.
We just got to go out there and play our game, and stick to the fundamentals and just do what we do best. Just focus.
If we score more touchdowns than the other team, we will win, kids. We will win. Let's talk about how we're misusing credit in America.
First of all, people think credit is money. Start there. It's not. The most dangerous thing in my wallet today, Joe, is my American Express Black Card. Because this thing here, and it's sexy, and it looks nice, and it's pretty, there's no limit on it. But that's not even a credit card. This is a charge card, which means in 30 days, I gotta pay the whole balance. A lot of people get in trouble. You start seeing celebrities in their bankruptcies and people who won the lottery or whatever. You see this credit card stuff because they thought this was an extension of their wallet. It's not meant to be an extension on your annual compensation.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, aka Really Smooth Dancer, as you can see from that video. And there's a smooth dancer, and here comes another smooth dancer, and yet another smooth dancer, and another smooth dancer.
Smooth criminal.
And I also noticed that
smooth brained.
The platform that we do this on, Riverside, it's called, did not hook up the place where you expected us. So hopefully you've made it over here and you're going to be a part of the show today, because we'll come to you a couple times. If you're hanging out with us, say hello, tell us where you're watching from, and be a part of the recording of next Friday's episode. You're going to hear music added later, and you'll hear some of the rough patches, which Steve Stewart will take out. But it's a lot of fun. So hope you have a good time, and we'll just get into it. Doug, you ready to go?
Yeah. All right. What the heck?
As long as we're here.
Let's see what happens. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and finally, it's a normal, straightforward, everyday, regular Friday episode of the Stacking Benjamin Show. What does that mean? Well, look, here's our recipe for some good old home-cooked finance chat. We start with a compelling topic like the one we've got today. Things we worry about as finance nerds and how to combat those fears. Cool topic, right? And then we add in some great contributors like the woman behind the Afford Anything podcast and YouTube page, Paula Pant. And also like this guy from the Best Interest podcast, Jesse Cramer. And how about our partner from over at Earn and Invest, Dr. Jordan Grumet, a.k.a. Doc G. Then I throw all that into a Ziploc bag and I shake it up real good. And what happens then? Shake and bake, baby! Shake and bake! Well, I mean, that means they're going to share some wisdom and insights and stuff. But it sounds way cooler when you say shake and bake. But that's not all. On today's episode, they'll also kick off our year-long Stacking Benjamins Trivia Challenge. And now, a guy who I think of first when I think of challenged, it's Joe Saul-Sehy.
Wow. We're starting off the year right, Doug.
We're firing on all cylinders today, baby.
Shake and bake and challenge, the same intro. Welcome back to another normal episode of the Stacking Benjamin Show. First one of 2025. We've had so many special episodes in a row. Let's say hello to the team that joins us today. Let's start off with the woman from the Afford Anything podcast. Paula Pant is here in a nice bright green, like happy sweater.
Yes. Yeah. I love bringing bright, cheerful kind of springtime colors to the gloom of winter. I never understood, why is it that when the trees are bare and the skies are dark, when it's gloomy outside and it gets dark at 4 p.m., why does everybody wear dark colors at a time when it's already so dark and gloomy? Why not snazz it up with some brightness?
Well, you see, Paula, for the answer to that, we're going to have to go all the way back to the Victorian times to discuss
Is this
civic cleanliness and their inability to clean up horse poop.
I was going to say, though, Paula, especially New Yorkers, I noticed I had a raincoat because it rained like hell when I was there in December with you and Jordan and OG. And so I had on this red raincoat. I felt I felt like I was way too colorful.
Right, exactly. And but to Doug's point, New Yorkers also kind of have a problem with cleaning up horse poop. So
maybe, yes. Is that what the mayor's worried about these days?
Maybe they like it.
that's rats. Rats is the bigger problem here. We have a rat czar. We have an official rat czar.
It's amazing. And the guy who's the rat czar of this podcast, I got no idea where that's headed. Doc G, Jordan Grumet's here. How are you, man?
I thought it was going to be me.
I was about to say, I didn't know if you were going to zig or zag there. Yeah. Were you going to Jesse? Or, you keep on talking about this is our normal Friday episode. And I was like, there's nothing normal here. Nothing normal here.
There might not be. Well, how's the book tour going, my friend?
It is busy. If you've been seeing a lot of me lately, it's because guess what? I had a book come out, but I've been trying to get out there and get the messages of the book across and just trying to celebrate. It's a big thing when you have a book drop.
Man. And I love, by the way, all the positive reviews I'm seeing, like not even positive, glowing reviews I'm seeing of it. Of course, well-deserved. But I was meeting one-on-one with a stacker named Hannah today. Hey, Hannah. And I told Hannah, I go, I got this book I think you'd really like. She goes, Doc G's book, The Purpose Code? I'm like, yes, exactly. She goes, I'm reading it right now. It's so good. So good. Yeah. So speaking of good.
One of the funny I was going to say, one of the funny things is when people are talking to you about the book and they start using your terminology. So it's pretty cool.
That is good. Like Little P.
Yep, exactly.
Yes. Speaking of Little P.
I knew that was coming. Thanks, Doc. You set me up.
I had a positive one all set up, Jesse, and then he's reloaded. Jesse Cramer, how are you, man?
Doing well. All this snow talk. I mean, at this point, my life is in grayscale here in Rochester. I mean, haven't seen the blue sky for weeks. You can see behind me. Look at that. Do you see any color?
Yes. No.
Back there?
No, but it is this nice winter landscape, this winter wonderland, which I think ends in June in Rochester, New York. I think, isn't that about right?
It'll schmelt by June. That's what they say. It's an old Rochester proverb. One of those. Metaphor, aphorism.
Yeah, all the above. Jesse, you would agree with me on this one because I totally agree with what Paula said about the bright colors. But I also, man, after the holiday season, I'm okay with taking down the Christmas trees. That represents a specific day. But why do we take down all those pretty lights? Like that? That's the one that gets me. We should leave the lights up and just call them winter lights.
Joe, you should meet the guy in my neighborhood who, by far, he had the most lights. I don't want to criticize him here on such a popular show because he's probably tuning in, but he could be a little more selective in what he chooses to put up in his yard. He kind of, last year, it took him till after Easter to bring them all down. It was St. Patrick's Day, and there was still a nativity scene out there.
You live next to Clark Griswold.
Different strokes for different folks. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, I'm super excited that all three of you are here today to kick off quote normal episode of the Stacking Benjamin Show. You know what? Today I got inspired when I was reading our friend Jim Wang's piece on index fund concentration. Jim writes at Apex Money. Go to apexmoney.com. He also curates a lot of good stuff there, but he shares his fantastic thinking there as well. And Jim wrote this. He wrote, I love investing with index funds, low cost, low thinking, diversified, safe. What scares me a little is that the top 10 holdings account for like 40% of the index, and it's mostly technology. I still invest in index funds, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The challenge with this realization is that there's no alternative. Many actively managed funds hold exactly the same assets. Pot, kettle, black, active funds are in the index concentration argument from Morningstar. This is a quote. Indexing critics claim, among other things, the index funds are the tail wagging the dog. The way they tell it, investors pour money into index funds. The funds shovel those dollars into their top holdings, and the portfolio gets ever more concentrated. This, they say, makes index funds a kind of perpetual motion machine, distorting the value of its stock holdings. Of course, then, active funds doing exactly the same thing. I know this is not something that the average person worries about, but this is something the average stacker worries about, the average afforder, the average best interester, the average earning investor worries about. Like, this is stuff our audience worries about, which got me thinking, this is kind of like the boogeyman, isn't it? We'll talk about why I think that this isn't the huge deal a lot of people think that it is. But what are some of these other deals, these things that we over worry about, these things hiding, going maybe bump in the night? We're going to go into all those in just a moment. But first, we have some sponsors that make sure this show's free so that you don't have to pay for it. All this goodness that's about to come with Paula, Jesse, and Jordan. But before that, let's hear from them. And then we're going to talk about what fears do our money nerd friends have and how do we fight those? All right, into the music, out of the music. All right, let's start this off with the actual topic here of index fund concentration. Paula, does this idea that, these top 10 holdings of the Magnificent Seven, as we call them now, that these dominate the index fund, and we're kind of going to go the way 7 companies go?
So it is true. I mean, the premise of the question is definitely true. The Magnificent Seven represent a major portion of a total stock market index or an S&P 500 index. But what people often miss is that throughout history, a handful of companies have dominated the overall market. So back in the day, it was railroad stocks, right? It was oil and gas stocks. It was in the days of Standard Oil and John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, like this was an issue then too. And so the entire idea behind buying a major index fund is to make sure that by virtue of not picking and choosing, you do have exposure to those 7 prior to when they become so big, so that you can be part of that growth.
Jesse, same question. Do you worry about this?
I've written about it before and certainly like thought about it a lot. And there's that whole idea, right, of the tail wagging the dog, or I mean, something that maybe stackers are aware of is back when index funds were initially thought of, the idea is, you know, at that time, any sort of mutual fund out there was actively managed. And you can, so because it was just everything out there was this way, you could think of it as this giant ocean liner of actively managed funds kind of cruising through the ocean, determining the prices of stocks, right? Everybody out there through their trading activity was determining the prices of stocks. And then you have this little index fund, this little dinghy that all it's doing is kind of tying a rope behind the ocean liner and saying, whatever you say the prices are, fine, those are the prices. We're just going to follow your lead and buy in at those prices. And so if that's the metaphor you choose to think about it as, and now we're in this paradigm. I want to say it mentioned the proportion of assets that are held now in passive funds. Is it like 60% or something like that? So now it's not a giant active cruise liner and a really small index dinghy. Now actually the index dinghy is considerably bigger than the cruise liner. And so does the metaphor kind of break apart? So it's interesting. If you think about it through that lens, are some concerns. I saw Nick Majuli just wrote this week about the index fund bubble. A lot of ink has been spilled on the topic. I think it's a really cool topic. I'm not personally too concerned, simply because prices are determined by trading volume, not necessarily by, you know, is it held passively or held actively? But we'll see what the future holds. I mean, what if the whole stock market ends up being indexed? How will that work?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, what ends up happening then is we're all buying these same, let's say it's not even 7, let's say it's these 500 companies. What happens to a company when they drop out of the S&P 500? I mean, holy cow, the amount your stock will drop just because of the indexification of the world could be gloom and doom for companies that are right on the fringe. Are you guys having trouble hearing me?
I can hear you, Joe.
Yeah, because Jesse, I don't know if Jesse backed up for everybody else too.
He did.
Yep. But then Jesse, there's a spur to words, so I know that Riverside's catching it, and I'm able to get the gist. But apparently, we don't have Jordan. This is the way it happens in real time, stackers. This is all the goodness you miss.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not getting anything. Like, I can barely follow you guys.
Jordan's the only one who's looks like almost pixelated for me, at least blurry.
Same.
He's had trouble with his internet all day.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Say something intelligent, and we'll let you know.
That might be impossible.
Wow. There was like 15 seconds gap there. Oh, and he's gone.
Yeah, I told him to go out and come back.
Okay.
And we'll see.
Yeah, I had a couple of gaps. Like, I never lost sight of Jesse, but his audio just kind of cut out.
Yeah, and after I asked the question, there's a little delay between me and Jesse as well, but it's not horrible. Have you guys heard that joke, by the way, about the 3 engineers driving through the desert in the car, and the car breaks down? So the mechanical engineer is like, "Oh, I'm sure that it's a belt. It's got to be one of our belts, something there." And they look at that, and that's not the case. So then the electrical engineer goes, "No, it's got to be the wiring or spark plug. It's got to be something to do with electricity. I'm sure it's electrically related." And they all look at that. They can't figure it out. So the 2 of them look at the computer engineer, and the computer engineer says, "Well, maybe if we just get out, slam the door real hard, and get back in, maybe it'll start running." Isn't that amazing, Doug?
No.
Doug?
You should strike that from your repertoire.
It's a great joke.
Really not. I have not. I've been sort of working on the trivia thing a little bit, Joe, because I know you were moving through this quickly. So I'm just trying.
It was great.
It was perfect. Really, it was. But I have not been, as long as we're on a little bit of a break here, I have not been paying super close attention to the contributions thus far. So I guess Jesse and Paula, be ready for me to just throw it to you in the close.
For thing one and thing two at the end.
Thing one and thing two.
Cool.
Unless I wrap this up. And I mean, it's should only take me about 3 more seconds since it was perfect to start with.
We tried to, when we were at Universal Studios, speaking of thing one and thing two, when my kids were like 8 years old, they have the Dr. Seuss area, and, Nick and Autumn are twins. So we tried to buy them the thing one and thing two t-shirts. And they both said, yeah, I'm not wearing that.
No.
Which sucked, because I thought that would have been hilarious. But then again, I didn't have to wear it.
Right.
Last night I was if you need to cut me off, Joe, go ahead.
No.
Are you kidding? After the phrase last night, I want to hear this and all of
Right?
it.
Oh, it's super exciting. It does involve a woman, Doug.
Oh, nice.
She's 7 months old.
Oh.
Last night I was giving my daughter a bath, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bath, and bath time's super fun. We're playing games, and she's playing with her little toys, and then I just kind of hear this like splash thunk, and I look behind me to see my phone sitting at the bottom of the bath, and I pull it out, I dry it off, stick it in rice. An hour later, everything seems fine, like literally 100% function. I was like, okay, dodged a bullet. I wake up this morning and like the touch sensitivity, non-existent. It doesn't recognize any of my touches, but it's just constantly recognizing phantom touches. So anyway,
is it an iPhone?
Like,
I didn't see it. When
it
you
is.
flashed
It
up
is.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, the new ones are supposed to be good for a couple of minutes underwater.
This one is 5 or 6. It's an iPhone 10. So I needed need is a relative term, but I could have used a new one anyway.
I mean,
and so now we're trying it.
Cheryl was looking for something this morning and had a accidentally spilled coffee on my keyboard.
Oh.
And at first it was no big deal, but today as I was trying to type, when I hit the space bar, like nothing happens half the time. So
Yeah. Dunzo.
I like how he had to hold up the keyboard to show that wasn't a euphemism for something.
This is a keyboard.
I hit the space bar.
I don't know if you guys have seen this.
Over and over again.
So I had this
Nothing's happening.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. There's something wrong with this house. The Wi-Fi is not working anywhere. I had to go completely move.
Oh, throw the house under the bus, man. Whatever.
It is. I'm so sorry, Joe.
Did the house remodelers install steel walls in every room?
Yeah, we've had trouble various times after they've messed around with the house, but yeah, it's just. What did you guys do? So you pause things?
We're good. We just waited for you. Yeah, I told a joke. You guys want to hear that joke again?
Really don't.
I'm sure they do.
All right. Here we go. 3. I got to remember what question I was asking Jordan.
You were talking about overconcentration in index funds, for which I don't have anything to add to what they've said already, but go ahead.
No. I was actually pivoting just a little bit.
Good.
3, 2, 1. Jordan, let's go to you. With your investments, how do you fight this concentration? I mean, if you know what's happening and you know that my index might be almost half 7, 8, 10 companies, how do you fight it?
I mean, there are a few ways to do it. One is you can accept that there is a little over concentration. And if you look at the S&P 500 over decades and decades and decades, it's always been somewhat over concentrated, yet the returns have continuously been good. So you can accept the fact that it is self-cleansing, that it will change based on what's happening and that you'll never go down to zero. So one is acceptance. The other thing is to realize that even equities are just one of many asset allocations, right? So you can have equities, you can have your bond allocation, you can have your cash allocation. Some people really like to do real estate, whether that's REITs or whether they own real estate. Some people are into things like crypto and gold. I personally am not, but it's another way also to diversify. So I think there's some other things you can do. There is obviously a group of people who believe in adding some of the things that are missing from the S&P 500, right? So can we add some small cap value? So that's a way in which you can add some other indexes. Could you add, basically a variety of different indexes to cover what the S&P doesn't? And that certainly is a way you could go if you're interested.
Yeah, it was my first thought, Paula, was why would we just have one index? I mean, you don't even have to get fancy with Bitcoin and real estate. You could just have 3 or 4 indexes.
Yeah, I mean, a small cap allocation is a great way to kind of offset a little bit of the risk. The key is, and you could spend eternity debating this question, is what percentage of your portfolio should you put in a total market index and what percentage should you put in a small cap allocation? But having some kind of a small cap allocation in there can, that can solve a lot of this concern if you do have this concern.
There's something else that Doc G said, Jesse, that I think a lot of people don't know about or don't think enough about, and he called it self-cleansing, right? That the index is self-cleansing. And I think this is a big thing. Do you mind explaining how the index is self-cleansing to our stackers out there? Because for me, this gives me a lot of comfort that I don't have to pay attention to the fact that this is only 7 stocks.
Well, yeah, I think what Doc G's referring to there, and maybe as an example, we can use an S&P 500 index fund, which is to say that when you have an underperforming company inside the S&P 500, and maybe as an S&P 500 index fund owner, maybe it doesn't appeal to you that you own this underperforming company inside of the index. Well, eventually, if the company continues to underperform, that company is going to drop out of the S&P 500, drop out of the index, and it will be replaced by another company that ostensibly is doing much better. And so that over time, all you have to do is look at the constituent companies of the S&P 500 over the last 50 years. And what you'll realize is that the companies that haven't performed well have eventually dropped out of the index. And the companies that started small and are doing really, really well eventually join the index. And as the owner of the index, own all the right companies, maybe not all the time, but enough of the time so that your returns have ended up being pretty good.
And I think, Paula, this was even part of your original point that people that are new to this might not realize, that if it during, you went back to John D. Rockefeller, for goodness sakes, but if it was Standard Oil back in the day, then it was General Electric and AT&T, and you didn't have to trade anything.
Yeah,
the index just kept up.
Exactly. So naturally, that's sort of the point of the index, is naturally over time, as the winners start to weaken in their position. I mean, General Electric is a great example. It still exists. It's not the Dutch East India Company. Like it still is in business. But it just occupies a smaller position of the overall index. And so naturally over time, as these things happen, the index automatically adjusts.
There's a fear that a lot of our money nerd fans have that I've seen on the internet that I'd like to also address. And that's the fear that if I buy an index fund, that these people managing the index fund on Wall Street are idiots and we can beat the idiots. That's not the reason why. And this is, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is not the reason why these people lose. If you've ever met people on Wall Street, they don't get Wall Street jobs because they're morons. The way they're paid, though, has a lot to do with why they lose and the amount of money. They're managing millions and sometimes billions of dollars, and their ability to get in and out of a position quickly is zero. Second, because of this thing called a prospectus, which is meant to protect you. If Paula runs a fund company, as an example, she is told that she has to buy this one asset class and that's it. And then her performance is based on how she does relative to the S&P 500. So through defensive mechanisms, aka I want to keep my job, they try to stay as close as they can to the S&P, making very few bets. So I hear often this fear that that, oh, anybody can beat the idiots and it's been proven. Well, it's not because they're morons. It's because of how they're paid. Paula, what's your cat doing back
My
there?
cat is about to attack my turtle. So that's my turtle tank. That's the cat sniffing the turtle tank.
Every
Now the
money nerd
cat
watching this video on YouTube with us is worried about that.
now the cat has lost interest in the turtle and is simply, oh, and now she's showing us her butt.
There
That's
it
about
is.
right. That's about right.
Well, better the cat than Doug. So we're good to go there. Doc, what's another thing you find people in your earn and invest community really worry about that, and that the average person doesn't worry about?
So what I hear, and I'm not sure if this is something that the average person doesn't worry about, but what I hear over and over again is they come into money somehow, right? They get a bonus, maybe they get an inheritance, something good happens and they have a bunch of money. And it's the fear that they're going to put the money in the market and the market's going to drop the next day. So they might buy into indexes. They might be like, okay, I'm ready. I like this idea of having money in equities, but I'm still going to kind of wait because things are running a little rich, right? That's what they say. It's running a little rich. Let's wait till the prices go down a little so that I can put my money in. And as we all know, no one can predict what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. And therefore, you're just basically keeping your money out of the market. And the longer you keep your money out of the market, the more likely in the long term you're going to lose. So I see that one quite a bit. I agree with this idea. I even know that I want to put my money in S&P 500 index, but things are running so high today, I better hold off.
We even see it, Jesse, with like 401k rollovers, right? Well, I don't know if this is a good time to roll over my 401k to an IRA because the market's high right now, and who knows, or the market's sinking, or the market's going up, or the market, all these reasons.
100%. I to back up what both you guys just said, a very I think it was a recent episode. I won't plug myself, but I had an entire episode of my podcast inspired by a woman, a listener who reached out in August saying, "Hey, this is August of 2024. Hey, is now the right time to invest?" And I listed out all the things that Doc G just said about like, hey, we can't be sure if now's the right time to invest or not. We had to flip a coin 100 times. Yeah, now you should invest sooner than later. And there's a bunch of reasons why. She didn't heed the advice. And then in December, she reached back out and said, "Oh, I guess you were right." Well, on that front, I'll say to listeners, there's a great quote to keep in mind, which is that market returns are written in pencil, not pen. So, right, my advice to her is right so far. For all we know, the market might drop 20% in a month, and then she can invest, and it would have been the smart thing to do. But to go back to what Jordan said, all else being equal, the odds are she should have invested as soon as possible. And just history bears that out over and over again. We can look at little things like the PE ratio, the CAPE ratio, the cyclically adjusted PE. And maybe we can try to make some arguments that when the CAPE ratio is high, when prices of stocks are high relative to their earnings, future returns tend to be a little bit lower. There's some truth there, but it still doesn't mean that just because you have a high PE ratio that you should avoid investing today. Is definitely a common thread that I think we all see in a lot of the DIY investor community.
What's your best strategy then? It sounds like it's just invest it now.
Yeah.
Get in.
Well, it is, or at the very least, something that I think is a really good middle ground is to say, okay, let's put together a plan that over the next 12 months, you're going to get this money in the market. My vote, Mr. Person I'm talking to, would be to put it all in today. And I think because of that, why don't you put a large chunk of it, put a third of it in today, put half of it in today, and then the remainder, let's put in an equal amount every month over the next 12 months, something like that. You know, it's not going to be ideal, right? You know, in retrospect, you're going to look backward and the ideal scenario will have revealed itself. Maybe July when there was a crash and that would have been the right time. But sitting here looking forward, prospectively, you don't know when the ideal time to commit is. And so if you want to hedge your bets, fine. Put in a little bit now, spread the rest over the remaining 12 months. But either way, you can dollar cost average that way, and at least your money will get in the market eventually.
Paul, anything you'd add to that or say differently to somebody who has that fear?
I would say time in the market, just to kind of piggyback off of it, but say it in a different way. time in the market is more important than timing the market. And as Jesse mentioned Nick Majuli earlier. His book is titled Just Keep Buying. And so I think if you kind of hold both of those ideas in your head, time in the market is more important than timing. And your job is to just keep buying. Like that's all you do. Just shovel money in and don't even pay attention to any of the rest of it. If you do that consistently over time, you'll be good. With a good asset allocation, you'll be good.
I would add on my end too, if it's because Doc, you gave us the example of somebody that has inheritance, right? So this is new money to you. If it's new money to you, I like Jesse. I like your idea of the dollar cost averaging in, because we don't know. And even though the market goes up roughly 70% of the time over long periods of time, we don't know that that's going to be tomorrow. So, if you're worried about it, then let's go ahead and go a little slower. The one that frustrates me is when somebody's doing the 401k rollover thing, because that money was already invested. So when they're like, okay, if I move it out, do I move it all back in right away? Well, yes, it was already invested. It was just invested worse than the way you're going to invest. So you're really on the same swing. When you were a kid and you were on the swings, I don't know about you, but when I was on the swings, I was trying to swing higher than everybody else, right? See if you could go all the way around. So if we got one swing that's going to go higher, why wouldn't I do that now? Like move to the better swing. If I think the IRA is a better swing than the swing that's not as good in my 401k, I need to just stay on the swing. I don't know if that analogy even makes sense. Should I talk more about swinging?
just keep swinging, Joe. Just keep swinging.
Yeah,
tell me another engineering joke.
When I was a kid, people thought I was such a swinger. It was so incredible. Doc, how do you answer this? You brought up the question.
So I'm a big fan of investing right away. I mean, dollar cost averaging is fun, but you might end up dollar cost averaging, and then the market might drop 50% the next day on the last day of your dollar cost averaging. So I think you can slice it anyway. I do love Jesse's idea. If you're anxious, dollar cost average. If you want somewhere in between, put 50% in and dollar cost average the rest. But as long as you're getting it in the market, you're winning. It's the people who keep holding and waiting and then never put it in that are the ones who end up losing long term.
Yeah, because you're betting against the market. And this is where just showing somebody that Ibbotson chart, right? The chart of the market over long periods of time. If you don't know what an Ibbotson chart is, we'll have one in our show notes page at Stacking Benjamins. But regardless of the CAPE ratio or whatever, Jesse, when you're talking about is now the time and timing the market, all you got to do is take a look at an Ibbotson chart and go, would I rather play that game or rather know that 30 years from now when I want this money, it's going to be a lot higher? Because that's what Ibbotson chart shows you immediately. Historically through all long periods of time. Paula, give us one more before we break for our amazing trivia competition kickoff.
One more fear, like one more worry?
What's a fear that our communities have?
I think a lot of people worry about black swan events, those low probability, high magnitude events. And rightfully so, because they are, very high magnitude if they were to come to fruition. But there can be sometimes people who over worry about black swan events, meaning they overestimate the probability of those.
So is that how you mitigate that? Is by telling the audience that the probability is not high? But we do know it is going to happen again. It will happen at some point.
Well, yeah. And I'm not just talking about market-based black swan events. I'm talking about any type of life black swan event, right? Like, I think
like fires where I live.
Exactly, yes. Which unfortunately many people are dealing with right now. Natural disasters. It could be getting run over by a truck. It could be. Doc has something to say about that.
No, not running over a truck. But go ahead, finish your thought, and I'll jump in.
I was like, he's got a story there. But any type of black swan event like that, whether it's something in your health or something in your community or something in the markets, I think people rightfully should protect themselves from the risk of ruin, but sometimes can be so worried about these that they overfocus on the threat.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in. It's interesting because we worry so much about the black swan events, and then we don't pay attention to what I call white swan events, which are devastating but highly often probable and likely events. So like getting a divorce is a white swan event that people don't want to do the prenup, they don't want to do the postnup. And yet, unlike a black swan event, lots and lots of people get divorced. So I love talking about the black swan events because I think it also shows how we actually don't mitigate against the obvious stuff. Good disability insurance, a really strong emergency fund, thinking about divorce. I mean, all the things, thinking about, a health crisis, like all these things that most likely will happen to either us or a loved one. We tend to be horrible at planning for those.
Well, which is interesting, Jesse, because you work in a financial planning office. I mean, one of my favorite things to do when I was a financial planner, these what if scenarios, right? Because I just love, to Doc's point, I love this idea of what if something bad happens? We just start listing all these things and come up with these strategies. It's actually, in a little bit morbid way, kind of fun to do.
I never could have guessed that I would drop my phone into the bathtub last night. Never saw it coming. Never in a million years. Total black swan out of nowhere. At first, I thought a meteor might have come down into the tub. That I could plan for. But the fact that it was my phone falling out of my sweatpants pocket, never saw it coming. No, both really good points. And yeah, to your question, Joe, it's really fun. Sometimes I worry that people view it as like they'll view you as a pessimist. Like you're a Debbie Downer. You're a gray sky Rochester non-color wearing pessimist, and all you do is think about
yeah.
Right. Story. So it's a true funny story. Growing up at one point, one of my older brothers was doing I forget exactly what he's doing. And my dad was kind of going through the whole, like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about this? And my brother called him out on it and was like, Dad, all you ever do is think about the worst cases. So my dad paused and kind of tilted his hand and looked at him and just goes, okay, how about this for a productive question? What if everything works out and it's just the best thing possible? Almost like, of course. Well, we don't need to apply any critical thought to that answer. What a wonderful world. The critical thought has to be applied to these negative what if questions. And yeah, so I think going back to your question, Joe, I usually try to couch it in like, hey, this is a hard part of the job. It's not always easy conversations, but have you thought about estate planning? What if, have you thought about your parents dying? What's going to happen in that situation? Have you thought about it? And I try to for me to bring it up to you, and I try to empathize with people, but it's certainly important, isn't it?
It is so important. And we have one of our favorite episodes, most watched episodes and listened to episodes every year, is when we talk about fire safety, which, Doug, is it's so wild to me that a fire safety episode where we do the fire drill. And I've had so many parents reach out to me going, we did that with our family afterwards. People aren't even parents going, I love the idea because I remember doing that when I was in school. Why don't do a fire drill now? And OG calls that in his financial planning practice. He calls it a fire drill. Paula?
Oh, I was going to say, I have a couple of friends who are firefighters for the Austin Fire Department. They came to visit, and one of my friends was like, just casually, he was like, all right, where's your nearest emergency exit? And I'm like, I don't know. and he was
he's like, wrong answer.
Yeah. And he was like, you don't know? Shocked. He was like, well, because I live on the 20th floor of my apartment building.
Yeah.
He was like, well, if something happens, what's the nearest stairwell? And I'm like, I don't know. Never thought about it.
Wow.
Paula, one question.
Yeah.
Did you become friends with this firefighter before or after you bought the calendar?
Inquiring
No
minds.
Came with the calendar.
Oh, nice. Bought the deluxe package.
But immediately, Paul, I'm sure you went and found out where that stairwell was.
I did. Yeah. Now I know.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. This idea of what if it happens, because Jesse, to your dad's point, it is so much better. I love planning for the worst. And then every time the best happens, I'm grateful. It's a super place to be. Mm-hmm. We're going to hear Jesse's amazing addition to this. conversation and another fear that people have. After our break, if you're brand new to the Stacking Benjamins community on these, quote, normal episodes, we have a year-long trivia competition, which we are starting today. And I wanted to start it today because our returning champion isn't here, and we might be able to get off with somebody else leading the way. But I don't know, because defending his honor today, Doc G from our brother podcast, Earn and Invest, is playing for OG. And then he's no longer playing for Mom. We're going to just make it official, Jesse, no matter what you say. Frequent contributor Jesse Cramer's playing no longer for Mom. She's got no interest in this. He's playing on Team Jesse now. So we'll call it Jesse and Friends.
Time to start trying.
Paula Pant in the Afford Anything community, who I know through the emails, a lot of the Afford Anything community behind Paula Pant, and hoping, well, just, hoping. I'm not sure what they're hoping for, Paula. They're just
2025 could be the year.
It very well might be. So we run this all year long, and the winner gets a dollar store trophy with an erasable front, which OG just popped up behind him on a recent episode.
Which he used. He used permanent Sharpie marker on the erasable. Maybe an embossing tool.
Trivia, that beautiful dollar store trophy. But for every answer, we have to have a question, and Doug furnishes those each week. So Doug, what's on tap to kick off the 2025 season?
Well, buckle up, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and welcome to the first actual Roundtable trivia question of 2025. Do you smell that? Yes, the air is filled with possibility and optimism, and frankly, some unresolved questions like, can Paula Pant finally capture at least second place in this competition? Or can Doc G miss our trivia answer by maybe less than 1 million? And of course, we're all wondering when Jesse Cramer will update his tech skills so he can low-key cheat again and nail 2 questions in a row on the dot, like he may or may not have done back in 2024. Look, I'm not accusing you, Jesse. I'm just wondering out loud in a disapproving tone of voice if it could happen. Jesse Gate's a real thing in Stacking Benjamins country. So let's begin these games by talking about a big, audacious 2025 goal we have here on the show. We're going to help some stacker out there become the next billionaire. That's a worthy goal, right? So here's today's question. After we +1 this invite to the Billionaire Club, how many billionaires will there be in the world? I'll be back with the answer right after I find out if a really successful lingerie store owner would be called a Brazilianaire. There's a term I probably just coined and should patent. TM on that, everybody. TM.
Well, Doug, either that or somebody from Brazil, maybe. Could be that too.
Either way, but which one would you rather think about?
Could be either somebody from Brazil. I would rather talk about. So let's kick this off. The man. So we go in reverse order of last year's standings, which means that Doc G is going to go first. Jesse will go second. Paula gets to go third. So number of billionaires plus our new billionaire. So number of billionaires right now plus 1 more equals what number?
Is that me? Am I up?
That you are up.
Put me in, coach. All right. So I think in the US, we're in the hundreds, right? 400 or 500, I thought, something like that. And so now you're asking the world. I'm going to say 3,542.
3,542. Very specific to kick off the year.
I wanted something specific. No reason.
Yes. Jesse. I love Jesse Gate, by the way. Very, very big. Like people in New England and what was that called? Football Gate or Flat Gate?
Inflate Gate.
Deflate Gate.
Deflate Gate.
Yes. Yes. As part of Bill's Nation, Jesse, I'm sure you know Inflate Gate.
Oh yeah, huge Tom Brady fans here. Well, actually, I remember there's a episode last year where I believe I quoted the number of U.S. billionaires, and Doc G, I think you were pretty darn close to on the money. If I expand it out to the globe, though, I'm going to go a little lower than the Doc, and I'm going to say 1,000 1071. 1071 is my guess. Neighbor Doug, book it.
What?
Look at Dano. Yeah.
That's what it says right here on Google. Is 1071. All right, Paula, you got one.
Fired.
Paula, you've got 1071. Jordan has 3542.
Well, when I heard the question, my first thought was 1,000 billionaires, only because I kind of like the contrasting orders of magnitude. And so, for the case of capturing the under, I will go 1070.
What could go wrong?
1070.
All right, we've got 3,542 from Jordan. Jesse next up with 1,071. Paula takes him out at the knees with 1,070. Is it Paula Pant's year? Is Jesse on the nose? Is Doc G within a million?
Yes.
We're going to find out in just a second.
I am.
All right. 3, 2, 1. We don't have any comments. Hey, YouTubers, say hello. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Jordan, you opened this up with a guess of 3,542. Both Jesse and Paula said, nay, they think it's fewer. What do you say?
I say that I'm going to be closer than usual, so I call that a win no matter what.
Do you want to do the speech right now? Just get it out of the way.
Pretty much I've won already, regardless of who really wins. So we're good here.
It's impossible to be off by a million. It would be fun though if it was
3,542. Yes, that would be really ironic. Yes.
And then Jesse, 1,071 sounded like a nice guess until Paula got there.
Yeah, it's okay. That's okay. I actually think I didn't want to divulge too much of my clandestine information before. For some reason, the number of like 460 is sticking out to me for U.S.-based billionaires. And I got to think there's more U.S.-based billionaires than other countries. But like all other countries combined? No, probably not. So I don't know. Just 1,071. I don't know. Hoping it's a little bit higher than that.
Just the voice in your head, Jesse. I love this self-talk, like back and forth. It is an amazing thing to watch. Paula, 1,070.
You know, if it's true that that there's maybe somewhere around 400, 500 U.S.-based billionaires, I would have to believe that the U.S. would have approximately half of the world's billionaires. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about being close to the 1,000 mark.
Well, you know who knows? I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Doug knows. Of course, Doug knows. Doug, who's taking home the first win of 2025?
Hey there, stackers. I'm billionaire maker and Brazilianaire believer, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. You know, Jesse Cramer politely cautioned me during the break not to talk too much about Jesse Gate 24. He said if I didn't shut up about it, he'd tell everyone that I was the guy behind the Doug coin debacle. I tried to tell him it had nothing to do with that except lending my perfectly proportioned face to the coin. He seemed to understand, but then again, he never really put the baseball bat down, so tensions are still a bit escalated here in the basement. Well, Jesse, I'm surprised you didn't totally nail today's trivia question, which was, how many billionaires are in the world after we +1 that number? Well, I'll tell you this. The number is 1,712 more than Paula guessed, 1,711 more than you guessed, and just 760 less than Doc G guessed.
No. Oh my God,
because the correct answer is 2,781 plus 1.
Yeah, baby.
Our stacker. And this absolutely sucks.
This is horrible. OG ends up ahead anyway.
This
the one time.
OG up by 1. It is a total catastrophe.
We tried to plan this out to have Doc G play for OG, so it wouldn't happen.
This is my year, baby. This is my year.
And it bites us in the ass. The guy goes to the Caymans, and we still can't. Oh, man.
So 2,781 billionaires in the world, and by the end of 25, we'll have one more because we're going to get a stacker there, but that's your answer.
Absolutely. Yes. And
I volunteer to be the one you get there.
It probably will be you. I mean, all those book sales,
New book.
all those book sales. It's definitely, It's going to make it at least 1 million.
Yeah,
Or, I'm sorry, a billion. Yeah.
You know how many billionaires there are out there writing books?
Yes, so many, so many.
A couple more than there are podcasters. All right, let's dive into the second half of this shindig, as Mom says. Jesse, what's another thing that we worry about as Uber nerds that maybe we can help people people calm down about a little bit?
Boy, that's a question for you. Does it have to be an Uber nerd concern, or can it just be a concern that I see out there? Okay.
Well, I like the one that Doc said. Yeah, the one that Doc said is Uber nerds share that. But, my mom recently asked that. She's like, what if I take this money and put it in the market? It goes down right away.
Yeah. And so that's, so maybe I won't, I could piggyback on that, but I think another one that might carve out some new territory here for us today is just the fear of scams and frauds in general, or just this idea. I hear this a lot where it's like, you know what, the stock market is rigged. The stock market's a scam. Other people are pulling the strings. They're just, they're waiting for a whole bunch of suckers like me to put my money in, and then they're going to pull the rug out from under me and take everything away. And so granted, there have been investments in the past, unregulated investments, Ponzi schemes, things like that, truly fraudulent schemes that people have heard about or are aware of. Bernie Madoff certainly did no favors for us, did he? But I think many people out there, they confuse the volatile nature of the stock market, or just the volatile nature of investments in general, which is a feature, not a bug. And instead, they come to the conclusion that the market itself must be a rigged game.
Well, let's dive into that. I mean, Jordan, two points. Movies like The Wolf of Wall Street don't calm anybody's fears, right? The whole Jordan Belfort thing. And then, when you look at the whole Reddit thing around GameStop, right? And all of the people going, look at what they did. There's more shares that are being like, how are they engineering this so the big guys still win while the rest of us lose? Like there's a lot of people thinking exactly what Jesse's talking about.
So my take on this, and this is a big reason why I think people also like index funds, is what we're really talking about here, I think, is efficiency, right? So the idea of efficiency is what's happening in the market, are the changes we're seeing accurate of what's really happening, or are they a momentary glitch? Are we seeing low prices because, for instance, the stocks are valued low? Or are we seeing low prices because it's a glitch, it's inefficient, and there's knowledge out there that we don't have, and eventually we could get that knowledge and realize that that's a low price, and we should get in or get out depending on that issue. The bigger the market, the more efficient it is, the more likely that the general knowledge out there is the correct knowledge. So it is true when you're talking about investing in something which very few people invest in, there's a lot more room for inefficiency. Maybe you just don't have all the knowledge. Maybe you don't know what's going on. But when we're talking about these bigger markets like index funds and even equities in general, it's such a big market. It tends to be efficient. In other words, the market tends to long-term move in the direction that it should, that's reflective of the values of the companies that are being represented. And so I guess I would tell someone who's worried that there's a hoax going on is the less investors you have in something, the more likelihood there could be a hoax going on. Whereas these really big markets tend to be really efficient, meaning that the price long-term actually matches the value. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. Well, and let's take that thought and run with it because, I think that it's funny. Crap. How do I want to ask this? I'm not sure how to frame that. So I'm going to move to something else and I'll come back to it. All right. 3, 2, 1. Paula, did you worry about the GameStop thing and all the Reddit talk that there was something nefarious going on under the hood there involving Robinhood and some of these big hedge funds?
Well, there was that controversy, I'm forgetting the details right now, but there was some controversy around Robinhood would allow you to buy, but it wouldn't allow you to sell.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. So I remember.
And also the short float being bigger than it should be.
Right.
But
and
kind of changing the rules.
That was so I mean, that particular event was so in the headlines and so closely monitored. I remember it was the one time that, the AOC and Ted Cruz actually agreed on something, which was both were like, "Hey, we need to look into Robinhood." And so that particular event was so closely monitored by not just the general public, but by elected leaders, and by regulators, and there were so many layers of protection there that I wasn't, I was a little fired up on social media about it, but I wasn't actually like worried in any deep way. I think where we have greater risk is in markets that have less regulations, such as cryptocurrency.
Jesse, do you worry about something systemic, that there's a bigger risk than just this maybe one-time thing, or just Robinhood, that there's, the people on Wall Street playing by different rules than you and I? Well, let's go to the next level. How about this? How about the people in Congress who have these phenomenal returns in their portfolios?
Yeah. So that goes back, and Doc G used the word efficiency, and my personal definition or understanding might just be a semantic difference from what Doc G was saying, but is the market's price reflective of all publicly available information? Or is there some sort of hidden information reflected in the price? And what that really means is, do some investors know more than me? Do they know secrets about a company that the company hasn't published yet? Well, does that mean that I'm not playing with a full deck? And of course, I'm not going to buy the stock at the correct price, or at the truly reflective price. And so that's how I think of efficiency. It's a function of the information that's out there, and whether it's publicly or privately available. And what you're referring to there, Joe, is if I'm in Congress, or if I'm a senator and I just sat through a top secret meeting that I have security clearance for, or just a meeting that I'm privileged to and other people aren't, and I know that some contract is going to company XYZ, or I know that some tax law is going to start affecting company ABC. Well, if I go out and I trade on that information, that sure seems like, if that person was working, if that senator was working for inside the corporation, that would be called insider trading. And that is a felony. We have laws against that. But if they're not working for the corporation, but they happen to be sitting in the right meeting on Capitol Hill, and they trade on that information, it doesn't seem fair. Is it succinct? It's a few hundred people in Washington, D.C. But yeah, it certainly doesn't seem fair. It riles me up if you can't tell.
Well, and I think the big question here is that, a lot of people say that, yeah, okay, that part of the system's rigged, truly doesn't affect you. I mean, truly doesn't affect, it does affect my ability to keep up with them, but it doesn't affect my ability to participate in the market.
That's true. But I mean, it doesn't make it right.
Not
at the same at the same time, like, it is not justified. And you're right. Like, does it prevent me from investing, or do I let that information affect the way I invest? No, I don't. But it's certainly a problem,
It is interesting, insider trading. Yeah. Jesse, you were talking about insider trading as somebody worked at the company. Insider trading is a real thing, and it isn't always illegal. Like, insiders are allowed to trade, and they have to publish their trades. Have you ever, Paula, made a trade because you saw some insiders making that trade?
No, in fact, I've never looked at published information that insiders have published. Where do you get that? Do you just Google like what?
You can go to CNBC.com, Yahoo Finance, wherever, look at the board of directors, and they are required to publish whether they've been buying or whether they've been selling. And by the way, what's interesting to look at with that is if they're buying or selling, my goodness, you have a you've got a whiner in the background there, Paula. We've got if they're doing it the same number of shares, the same amount of money, maybe once a quarter, I know that's a financial plan in action, right?
Yeah.
But if they're doing it irregularly, it becomes much more interesting, because then I believe there might be something that they know. That was actually the entire reason people have been fans of the show for a while. The only reason I bought Lumen stock was because the new CEO that came in bought a crap load of Lumen stock. And then it turned into the worst company ever. Then it turned out I was brilliant. And now it turns out I'm somewhere in the middle. And if I don't sell soon, I will be dumb again because it just has continued to go down. But as I've also said, I didn't put much money. I think I put, $500 in it. So it wasn't going to be the end of the world for Joe if Lumen goes under.
But
Doc?
doesn't some of this argument fail to recognize the fact that market beta is kind of free, right? Average market returns are free to anyone who wants them. It's true if you want alpha, right? If you want above market returns, A, you could rig the system, right? With things like insider trading, or B, you could be incredibly lucky, or I guess C, we could say maybe there are a small number of people with a huge amount of skill that will get them alpha. But regardless of all that, to say the whole system is rigged ignores the fact that beta is free, right? You get the S&P 500 index or you get a total market index and that's it. It's free.
And I do, Jesse, I like that position of, you know what? I feel like a lot of us ask our portfolio to add alpha to our life, and we don't ask that of our career, of our life, of other areas.
Yeah, I think your energy is better spent seeking out, if we're using the alpha and beta terms, it's your energy is better spent seeking out alpha in other arenas. 100% agree.
Paula, you got one.
What Doc G said, you're right. Like beta is. Oh, sorry guys, I might be. My connection isn't great.
Yeah, I just got caught in the stop there, so I'll just go 3, 2, 1 and continue. 3, 2, 1.
Going back to what you were saying there, Doc G, the whole idea of beta is free. It is. I do have this question, or like thinking back to whether we're talking about market efficiency or the index fund bubble or anything like that, or black swan events. I mean, there are these ideas of just because we have an efficient market and just because beta is free, that isn't the same thing as saying that that the price is correct. It just means that the price is reflective of available information. And right, I mean, and that's kind of getting back to Robert Shiller, Irrational Exuberance, or even Warren Buffett, who does say, like, there's a very famous kind of laughs at the interviewer and says, like, no, of course the market's not efficient. Look at what I've done and look at what a lot of other people have done. And, so it's just that for you and I to try to think that we have more information to be right more often than the market in general, that I agree with you 100% and say, yeah, just take the market performance, take the beta and move on to other aspects of your life.
But I even think traders, Jesse, who do this all day long, because they know how dangerous it is when you think you have all the information, are experts. The good ones that I've talked to are experts at going, you know what? What's the chance that I don't have all the information? Where the average person who's a stacker, a best interester, or an investor, a forwarder, like all of our communities, I think are, from the people that I've talked to, less likely when you feel this good feeling about something to go, there's got to be information I don't have. Like the best traders do that. We talked to a guy named Jack Schwager who profiles these amazing investors who beat the market over and over and over and over. And I love Jack's quote, which was, the market is not efficient. To your point, Jesse, he goes, but for 99.9% of us, we should pretend it is.
Yes. It's great.
We should think like it is, because it's a hell of a lot of work to go the other way. And you don't want to, the juice isn't going to be worth the squeeze when there's so many other things that we might be able to do. Paula, bring this home. Give us one more. How about that?
One more fear or worry? Actually,
one more fear.
Can I also just share my thought as you guys have been talking about the market?
Yes.
Is that quote about how in the short term, the market is a voting machine, and in the long term, it's a weighing machine.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that I forget who it might have been Charlie Munger or somebody, but that was what was going through my mind as I was listening.
It sounds like Charlie Munger, because it goes right along with that Warren Buffett quote about Mr. Market, right? Mr. Market from day to day doesn't know what he thinks. One day he thinks it's overvalued, next day he thinks it's undervalued, but over the long term, Mr. Market's right on.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's Ben Graham, The Intelligent Investor. It's from that book. Both Mr. Market and that quote are Grahamisms.
Well, there you go. Paul and I got the leaves. Jesse goes to the root.
Nice. Yeah.
Right on the same family tree. Yeah. Paula, what's one more fear?
I think overly obsessing about asset allocation. I've heard and actually to go back to the beginning of this conversation, particularly in the spirit of people now kind of distrusting an S&P 500 or a total stock market index, one of the outcomes that can come from that is just getting so granular and so obsessive about asset allocation that it starts missing the forest for the trees, and and basically at that point you're worrying about the wrong things.
Paula, we can't bring that up right now because I'm trying to get people to worry about asset allocation a little bit. We can worry about it just a little bit. Like I'm speaking to that part of the audience that doesn't think about it at all and thinks it's baloney and you shouldn't do anything about it. Like, come on.
Maybe we come to the Goldilocks scenario, right? Like this porridge is too hot, the porridge is too cold. Oh, this porridge is just right.
But to your point, I mean, between the fire community who says don't think about it at all, which drives me crazy, and then the people who like I was helping someone look at their portfolio today, and they had like part of their money in a Japan fund, and I was like, why do you have a Japan fund? Because they got this granular asset allocation, that was way too granular. Like why are we not at least opening that up and just being Asia?
Right.
Why are we making the bet on one country? Jesse, do you guys see that in the practice that you work in, people over obsessing with asset allocation?
Occasionally. It's probably one thing I will say is generally the people who were working with us, they don't. This is probably true of a lot of financial planners where it's like the reason why you're seeking out professional help is because you might not want to really care about your asset allocation all that much. You want to focus on other areas of your life. But when it comes to my podcast audience or my blog readers and who are largely DIYers, that's where I'll get comments in saying, hey, Jesse, I started this portfolio out thinking I'd be 70% stocks, 30% bonds. And you know what happened last year. And I see it drifting. It's closer to 71-29 right now. And I'm growing a little concerned. Right. Or just questions like that. I think we're all probably familiar with questions here similar to that. And that's where, as Paula set the stage in my head, I was just thinking they're missing the forest for the trees. And as soon as she said that, I was like, yes, that is the perfect thing to say. It truly is missing the bigger picture for the trees. But yes, the milling against two. And I loved seeing you, Joe, in your recent, Merriman, going down the Merriman rabbit hole, as it were. A lot of people also just say, what is wrong with 100% VTI, 100% stocks for every single part of my life, no matter how old I am or what my goals are? What is wrong with that? And that's also the wrong approach. It just simply is.
Paul, I'm going to meet you halfway on two areas. Number one is somebody just starting out who's worried about asset allocation. That drives me crazy. Like just starting out. Those are the people, Jesse, that need to be doing the VTSAX.
Right. They're like, oh, I've got $1,000 to invest. How do I allocate it?
Right. I want to buy 5 stocks or whatever. And then the second thing is though, and I'll meet you partway here. I don't think asset allocation, I like that first word. Asset picking. The actual thing inside of the asset class, which Markowitz proved.
Like security selection?
Yeah, security selection. Yeah, like Markowitz proved it's the asset class generally that matters far more than picking the specific stock inside of that asset class. So if you are going to worry about something, worrying about, and I find that newbies really worry about what stock to buy. Then I think, Jesse, they graduate to where you are, which is, or Paula, what you're talking about, which is then they graduate to worrying about, am I 30% or 29% in this asset class?
I also think we kind of get it wrong based on our age too. So I think with young people, the biggest return for them is going to be the money they put in through accumulating wealth, through working or their businesses, etc. So for someone just beginning, putting money in something like VTSAX makes a lot of sense, because honestly, where they're really going to build their wealth is how much money they put in. Now, take someone who's in their 40s or 50s and they're starting to think about making less money and decumulating. That's when asset allocation can actually really start changing things. And I think this is a lot of what you, Joe, talk about and Paul Meerman talks about. Long term, when you're talking about decumulation, having the right asset mix could possibly lead to much higher withdrawal rates. And so I think for young people, it's like, dude, make lots of money and just make sure it's in the market. Make sure it's in something decent. But as you get older, then it makes a lot more sense to start really paying attention to those asset allocations if you choose to be someone who's really trying to improve things on the margin. Like, there are going to be some people who are lazy like me, and they're going to say, well, I get it, but I'm not interested in that extra, 0.5% or percent. I'm okay with doing less work. But for the people who really are interested and excited about that, that's really when you want to start looking at things.
I think scientifically, you get above $100,000 saved. That's when you should get a little more granular. But we'll leave that for another day. That's another part of the battle that we'll do another day. Maybe on Afford Anything, Paula, where you and I think have that discussion coming up. We're going to get granular.
We do. Exactly.
Yes. Let's transition to that. Let's find out. That's a good place to leave this discussion. Let's talk about what's going on where you guys are. Paula, kick this off. What's going on Afford Anything?
On the Afford Anything podcast, you join me for a discussion. This is actually kind of a series of discussions that we've been having for a while about asset allocation, about the efficient frontier. If you want to get beyond simply VTSAX and chill, and you want to start asset allocating in something more than just that total stock market index fund or more than just the S&P 500, what should you do? Should you construct a 4-fund portfolio, a 10-fund portfolio? How much effort will it take? How do you determine which funds to buy? Joe, you walk us through all of that. So, and you do so sort of over a series of episodes, and each one kind of keeps getting better and better. So those are all of our recent Q&A episodes.
Just trying to troll all those VTSAXers one at a time as much as I possibly can. And that's at the Afford Anything show.
Yes, on the Afford Anything podcast.
Absolutely. And that episode, by the way, that you're talking about specifically, the one where we kind of walk through it, step 1, step 2, step 3, you really want to be on the Afford Anything YouTube channel.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. YouTube.com/Afford Anything, because there's charts, there's graphs, where we go all out.
A lot of graphics. We'll go to the best-selling author last. Jesse,
very graphic.
What's going on at the Best Interest podcast, man? You've got a big. Can we talk about your milestone coming up first?
Yeah. I mean, well, we've got a few interesting, because today Doc G's episode came out today. Awesome discussion. But in a couple episodes, we've got episode 100, the big century.
This is so
a century of episodes for the Best Interest podcast. It started with, the funny thing is we joke about recording in the basement here. I think my early episodes, I was actually in the basement. I certainly sounded like I was in a basement. I also sounded like I didn't know how to speak the English language. And here we are 100 episodes later. So it's been a big journey.
Which shows if Jesse can do it, anybody can do it. Actually, to be serious for a second, the average podcast lasts 7 episodes. And so to reach a big number like 100 episodes, and by the way, to see the guest lineup you've had those first 100 episodes has been, it's phenomenal.
Thank you, Joe.
It is great, man.
Especially the last one.
That's true. That's true. My mom always said I was about 14.
Oh, we totally missed the joke.
Oh,
yeah. Just cue us on that again. What did you say?
Your mom always said.
Mom always said.
My bad. 3, 2, 1. You know what? My mom always said I was about 14 times better than average, and here we are today.
Oh, the math humor runs in the family then, Jesse, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a family of engineers?
It runs deep. My dad was a biology teacher. My mom was an English teacher.
Oh, That's a wild, wow, meeting of the minds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I ended up like this. Yeah.
And you ended up on the Stacking Benjamin show. Your parents like, what happened? Doc G, what's going on besides, being on the amazing book tour? What's going on at Earn and Invest?
Well, after winning the first trivia of the year on the Stacking Benjamin show, I was thinking of packing it in and doing nothing for the rest of the year, actually. That was it. I'm done. But if I happen to go forward with the episodes I have planned, yesterday's episode, and I'm saying yesterday because we're recording this, it's going to be in the future, but actually today, Joe and I did a community episode where we talked about a Yahoo Finance Marist poll that they did of 3,000 banked individuals and asked them how satisfied they were with their savings in 2024. You can hear us discuss the results with community member Matt Sly, as well as Joe Saul-Sehy and I. We try to do a community episode once a month. This one is coming a little early, but I'm excited to have this conversation. That's on Earn and Invest.
Wait a minute. You still do community episodes?
I still do once a month, usually the last Thursday of the month. But since I have some rewind episodes coming up, this is the second to the last Thursday of the month this month.
I was in a forum where I read somebody saying that like Doc G used to do those community episodes. I'm like, when did he quit? he never stopped. There hasn't been one in a month. It's a good time. And to give people just a little preview of that, Doc, people generally not feeling it.
Not so happy with their savings. Kind of pessimistic, but I think we gave it a, optimistic spin towards the end.
We did. And how can you not with Matt, who's a great community member of yours and such a nice guy. And that's on Earn and Invest. All right. That's going to do it for today. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody on YouTube. Thank you also to our contributors. Doug is also going to thank our contributors in a moment. And we'll see you guys back on Monday. Doug, what are our big 3 takeaways from today's show?
Well, Joe, first, take some advice from the single nicest and most passive, nonviolent contributor on the show, Jesse Cramer. He told us exactly the right time to invest. I was listening, Jesse, but I was a little distracted. Could you tell us again when the right time is to invest?
Sorry, guys. I'm just getting timing issues over here. 3, 2, 1. Whether you're an alpha or a beta, it's okay to be a little dingy.
Might not have answered the question, but it sure was good.
We'll take it. Second, take this from our resident crazy cat lady, Paula Pant. She said people worry too much about black swan events. Paula, I think you're uniquely qualified to tell us how black swan events are exactly like a cat's butt. Can you walk us through that again?
Absolutely. Actually, black swan events and cats' butts are similar in 3 ways. So both are hard to control. Both are totally unpredictable, and both can be incredibly disruptive surprises.
I think you have to end there, Doug. I don't think we can add any more to that.
But I do have a big lesson. What I learned was that if you want to become a Brazilianaire, don't try getting into ladies' lingerie because there are no verified underwear billionaires. However, there are at least 33 billionaires in Brazil. Either way, my new term is a thing, and I just trademarked it. Thanks to Dr. Jordan Grumet for joining us today. You'll find Doc G's Earn and Invest podcast wherever you're listening to us right now. You'll also find Jesse Cramer's Best Interest podcast on whatever platform you're listening to us right now as well. And we're going to include links in our show notes for both shows at stackingbenjamins.com. And finally, let's thank Paula Pant from Afford Anything for joining us today. You'll find her fabulous podcast, Afford Anything, wherever you listen to the finest podcasts.
I think we got to thank Paula's cat. Paula's cat.
Yeah.
Paula's cat. Paula's cat.
You're
Paula's
right.
pants for making it.
When we, if you guys want to edit this and just stop right after the 3 ways cat butts,
I'm telling you,
like Black Swan
that
Swan
was
events.
That was the end. That was it.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Contributors, hang on for just one more second.
We'll see if I can lose internet again.
You know, you turned out
Stopping,
fine.
stopping.
It was Jesse who became
It was-
the problem child later on.
It just said to me something went wrong. That's